All right. Welcome to Influence, a production of This Week in Health IT, where we discuss the influence of technology on health with people who are making it happen. My name is Bill Russell, recovering healthcare CIO and creator of This Week in Health IT, a set of podcasts and videos dedicated to training the next generation of health IT leaders. This podcast is brought to you by Health Lyrics, helping you to build agile, efficient, and effective health IT. Let's talk. Visit healthlyrics.com to schedule your free consultation. Today, we're going to do a show about executive coaching. This is a show that I've really wanted to do for some time because I've found great value in having an executive coach, and I wanted to explore for our listeners what a good relationship with an executive coach looks like. Our guest today is appropriately my executive coach for probably a decade or so, Bob Perkins. Bob Perkins is with Bob Perkins Consulting and Vision for Your Life, author of a couple books and a recently released book, which I hope we'll have some time to discuss at some point in the show. Good morning, Bob, and welcome to the show.
Morning. It's great to be here. Thank you, Bill.
So trying to squeeze in this executive coaching with your authoring of books, is that hard to do?
Well, the first book was excruciating, but the second book was a little easier. And then this book has been just a total labor of love. I have, it's a collection of stories from my years of going to France. And I could spend the next hour talking about France and wine and all that too, but probably we should talk about executive coaching.
Yeah, well, and I'm looking forward to getting my autographed copy of Defeated by Lunch, right? Is there a subtitle to it or just?
Yeah, Defeated by Lunch, my times in France, and just tell the quick story that it comes because Debbie and I went to lunch one day and 9 courses paired with wine for every, and we came back to the place we were staying, and I said, Debbie, I'm going back to bed. I am defeated by lunch.
That is, and you're the one who introduced me to France, and before going over there, you sort of you knew my background, you know how fast I eat, and you're like, Bill, you got to prepare for this. The meals are the event. It's like, and they will make you sit for 2.5, 3 hours. And I'm like, there's no way you can eat for 3 hours. And you do.
You do. You wait. Yeah. It's part of French culture.
And
one of the things I love about French culture, actually.
Yeah. And it's wonderful. I mean, not only talk to the people at your table, you're talking to people at the other tables, because the restaurants are different than they are in the States. It's not big, loud, get as many people through as possible. It's really almost like dining in somebody's home and you're interacting with people. Anyway, we should probably talk about executive coaching.
Yes.
Because we could easily talk about this for a while.
We'll do another podcast on just France.
Yeah. By the way, last side note, I'm wearing my Baylor hat because my daughter finally selected a school, my youngest daughter, and she's going to go to Baylor, and I'm very proud and excited. I do have hats from every school she went to, but this is going to be the only one that I don't exercise in. So, so we'll be good to go. So Bob, you've been my executive coach for a decade. And I think the first question I hear a lot of people saying is, what exactly is executive coaching?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's, I think that executive coaching is very similar to what coaching is in any other field. It's somebody who comes alongside, sees a bigger picture, and is in it with you. If you're coaching a football team, you're not playing the game. The players are playing the game, but the coach is there to give some perspective and maybe even in that sense call plays, which executive coaching does not do. But it's really somebody who is in it with you. Number one definition of leadership, the top thing about leadership is by definition lonely. Nobody wants to really kind of face and admit it, but that's what it is. It's lonely. And the coach really comes alongside and says, listen, I'm in it with you. And I think the really effective coaching happens in those moments when you have to make big decisions. And there's somebody there to walk with you through that decision making. There's a story. One of the presidential biographers says that really we pay these presidents for a couple of big decisions in their tenure there, and every one of them has to make a couple of really big decisions. And that's what they're known for. That's what their presidencies are known for. And in one sense, that's the value of having that outsider, that person who has a perspective from the outside, who can see the whole field and can be in it with you.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, one of the things that people don't recognize, I didn't really recognize until I got into a leadership role, is there's a whole bunch of things that you think, well, I'm just going to talk to the people around me, and you can't.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what I'm thinking, or this is, and you almost need someone to say, hey, stop, step back, and let's talk this through.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's value in perspective.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that, as you know, you don't need me 2:00 on Tuesday. You need me when you need me. And so, you know, it's you're driving to work and you've got that meeting you're going to go to, and that's when you call, or you've walked out of a meeting and you say, I'm going to whatever. And that's when you get the call.
Yeah, it's and you cut out a little bit there, but that's fine. It's interesting because I do something that I call CIO coaching right now, and I make it very clear to people, I'm not doing executive coaching. I'm not looking at emotional intelligence. I'm not looking at a lot of those things. What I'm doing is literally diving deep into healthcare and saying, hey, here's the movements we're seeing and those kind of things. But from your perspective, you don't have a healthcare background and you don't have a technology background. So I think some people are probably sitting back and going, you know, what does executive coaching look like between you and a CIO for a healthcare organization?
Yeah, because leadership is leadership.
Right.
And that's what I'm very clear about this too. I'm not your technology coach. Good God. I mean, that would be a nightmare. But my history and my experience has been in leadership. And so that's what I bring to the party. And I'm in it with you for leading your team. You know, as you know, the tagline for my coaching practice is that every business is a people business, every problem is a people problem, and every solution is a people solution. We're in the people business. And your number one job as a leader is leading people.
Right.
Even the technology guys, it's a people business. And so, you know, that's where I really come alongside.
Yeah. So when you start a relationship, a coaching relationship, is there like a minimum amount of time, or do you that, you know, is required, or are you looking for like a year? I mean, we've been doing this for a decade because it's like every time I turn around and say, okay, I'm not going to need you, it's like it doesn't make sense to say, okay, I don't need a coach. And it's interesting because for the last 3 years, I'm not a CIO for a health system. I'm starting a new business, and it's a whole different set of things we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, there is a curve that you have to come up. And as you know, I start with my own proprietary emotional intelligence assessment that we called Core Motivator. And that's the first step when someone works with me, is identifying their core motivator. Why do you do what you do the way you do it? That's the uniqueness of who you are. We can talk about that, you know, for hours also. But we start there, and then it becomes a conversation about how are you leading out of who you are. And because most people don't know their core motivator, that becomes, you know, in the front end, that's the biggest challenge. How do I help you really live proactively and lead proactively out of who you are? Because it's your longest suit, it's your greatest strength. Who you are is your greatest strength. And so to help you lead out of who you are is the number one thing. And then the second thing is to say, what are my blind spots? What don't you see? And how do I help you see what you don't see? So those two, you know, kind of go hand in hand. Obviously, it helps when I'm working with, as I have with you, when I know the team. I get to know the team and the people that are reporting to you and that you're leading. That's really helpful, because now if I know the core motivators of the whole team, Now we're really able to get everybody on the team living out of their long suit and helping you lead them out of their long suit.
Yeah, core motivator is interesting, and it's also Vision for Your Life is the title of your second book, which goes into the core motivator assessment and process in some detail. But what I found was really interesting is you go through it and you go through the process, and when you get to the other side and you say, "This is my core motivator," it's like all of a sudden a whole bunch of things start to fall into place. Like, oh, that's why I do this. That's why it's and I'm sure people have had this experience where they go, "Oh," but when you have that across the team, and now you're looking at it and you're going, "Oh, this is why this interaction doesn't work. This is why." This is why these two have trouble working together. This is one doesn't see things, the other. From a leader standpoint, there was so much value in just understanding that, and then being able to help people to be successful, and help them to even self-coach once they understand who they are and what their strengths are.
Well, exactly, and the very things that cause the conflict. Most times are because of the core motivators. And so part of the role for the coach is to help you see the world from the perspective of the other person on the team, but it's because of their core motivator. And then, and also for them to see yours. It's where it gets really powerful. I will say that the discovery process of core motivator is the aha moment. And that's a big deal, and it's huge. But the real power, the afterburner, is the coaching, because the discovery moment is just that. But if you don't take it and start living it out every day, it's just that. It's just a discovery moment.
Yeah, and we've had several conversations where you'll see what I'm doing and you'll say, I'm not going to say what my core motivator is because I don't want the whole world to know. Well, actually, I don't care if the whole world. I just might as well make a shirt. But you'll say, know who you are and be it is a phrase you use over and over again, which is know what your strengths are, know what your core is. It's more than your strengths. It's like know who you are at the core and just be that. And when you do, even if you don't like what that is, if you work and operate out of that, you will tend to be more successful because it's what drives you at your core.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's how you are hardwired. So it's the most natural way for you to live. And there have been two big surprises I've been doing this for just over 20 years. And two big surprises. The surprise number one is that no one knows their core motivator. That's been shocking to me. I thought we'd come along, somebody would say, "Oh yeah, it's this." And I'd say, yeah, that's right. No one. Number one. Number two, and this is the real shock. Most people are living out of their second. That at some very early point in their life, they kind of recognized that they were going to run away from their true core and live out of second. And so a lot of what I wind up doing with the coaching is helping people begin to really live out of first.
Right, because none of the cores are bad. And even if they're living out of their second, it looks good, but it's good as the enemy of the best. It's good, but it's not who you really could be.
Exactly. So the challenge is to help people really live out of first. And by the way, first is how you see the world. We all see the world through the lens of our core motivator, even if we're living out of second.
Yeah.
Which is crazy too. But helping you live out of first, identify the second that you've been living out of, and then see what is last. What are you completely blind to? So that you really can help build teams. The best teams have, multiple core motivators on them and people seeing the world from different perspectives.
Yeah. As you're digging in here, I wanted to throw this question in, which is, is there a difference between coaching and really therapy sessions? Sometimes they do devolve into therapy sessions because it's.
And I don't do that. I don't let those conversations go very far without saying, this is really where counseling is needed. and you should probably get some counseling. Although I have not had to do that very often, I have to say that. Most because I'm working with senior executives who are fairly healthy,
Right.
Or they wouldn't be in those jobs. Not all the time, but that's the general rule. There have been a couple of times where I've said, this is outside my realm. You need to go get some counseling.
Right. So, so coaching is really focusing in on being effective in the role and being effective in the job. There aren't a lot of conversations where you're talking about the family or talking about, I don't know, other extraneous things. I mean, you really are focused in on helping them to be as effective as they can be within coaching, or do you branch out from there from time to time?
Well, you'd be surprised how many conversations we wind up having around, particularly family, because the same principles of core motivator are rolling over into your family. The people closest to you, and so yeah, I mean, it applies across your whole life. Now, you're right that most of the conversations are focused on work, but it bleeds over to it's your whole life.
What does someone look like? So, okay, so somebody's listening to this and they're a CIO or even a CEO for a health system, and they're going, all right, I'm ready to hire an executive coach. What should they be looking for? I mean, is there some sort of affinity or connection you're looking for, or is it just, do they need industry background? Do they need a certification? What is somebody looking for?
Well, again, great question. I think it depends on the individual. What do I need? I certainly think that the more responsibility you have, the more people you have to lead. Probably the number I would suggest that the number one thing that you're looking for is someone who really understands leadership. I think one of the mistakes is going and getting subject matter expertise, because you probably are the subject matter expert in the field. That's why it's partly a lot of why you have the job, but it's the leadership role that at the end of the day is going to be the thing that matters most, and that's what you should be looking for, in my view. And then I think, secondly, I do think there's a sense of which is there connection. You just, are you going to pick up the phone and call? Because if there's not the connection, you're not going to call. So, that does have to be there. It's about trust. Do you really trust the guy on the other end of the phone? You better, because it's everything.
So what kind of questions? So I'm going to interview an executive coach. What kind of questions should I ask?
Yeah, I think number one is, what's your perspective, philosophy on leadership? I've told you mine. Every business is a people business. Every problem is a people problem. Every solution is a solution. That is my perspective on leadership. That it begins and ends with the people, and we are all about understanding the people and leading the people. That's my perspective. So that has to align. If you're looking for a coach that has a different perspective on leadership, well then I'm not your guy. But you got to go find somebody who is. The number one question is, do our perspectives align? And I think the number two question is, is there chemistry? Do I trust you? And then the number three question would be, is it a perspective on this leadership thing that I probably may not have right now?
Yeah.
The uniqueness.
So what does coaching success look like? I mean, do you set up a framework ahead of time to evaluate success over time? And I mean, this is one of those things where I don't think you'd sign up a coach for 3 months, because you just don't get the value. You almost have to do it over, you almost have to be thinking, this is going to be my coach. If I'm in an executive role, this is going to be my coach. And if that coach doesn't work, you get another coach, like in football. But you should almost have a coach, and then there should be a way of evaluating it. So how do we evaluate success?
Well, it renews.
Somebody says there was value, I'm going to keep doing this. Yes.
I mean, that's a simple answer. It renews. Yeah, because that's the client has to look back at the end of the year. I agree with you. It's not a 3-month thing. pretty much my minimum is a year. In some cases, we'll talk about 6 months, but really it's a year. And, I think, to go back and say, you evaluate at the end of the year and say, were there those times where the big decisions and I was able to be there and really help you process through those big decisions.
Yeah. That's really true. It's more frustration than anything. And one of the things that happens in a large organization is silent vetoes. People sit in a room and they're all shaking their head and they're all going, yes, we're on board. We're 100%. And then you're like 6 months down the road and you realize, hey, 3 of these people aren't on board at all. They're not helping. In fact, they're hindering. And you're like, I thought we had agreement 6 months ago. And that's where the frustration comes in. And you're like, all right, well.
And how do you get them? Hopefully you'll be able to get them on the same page beforehand. And the value of knowing the team is to say, hey, if you're going to pitch this to your team, then understanding the various core motivators on the team is understanding how they're going to process and hear it. I talked about perspective on leadership, and my other fundamental truth about leadership is visionary participatory leadership, and what that means, and unpacking that and helping a leader process.
Visionary participatory leadership. So visionary, you're leading with pictures. Participatory, you're bringing people along and they're a part of this defining the solution. And then leadership, at some point, it takes courage. You have to get out there and you have to make something happen.
Exactly. And each of those are, have their own unique challenges.
Yeah. No, absolutely. All right. So I happen to be in an organization where I walked in and said to the CEO, I wanted to have an executive coach. And she said, absolutely. All of our leaders have executive coaches, but that's not always the case. So how does someone in a CIO role go to their executive and say, look, I want an executive coach? I mean, how do they build the case?
Well, I think they say that you've hired me to do a job. But if you go back to my original example, I'm in Philadelphia. We've hired Carson Wentz to do a job, but we want the best out of Carson Wentz. And so not only do we have a great head coach, CEO, that's Doug Peterson, but we're going to hire a quarterbacks coach just for the quarterbacks. And they're focused on that quarterback to make sure that we get the best Carson Wentz on the field that we can possibly get. That's the same deal that I would sell to the CEO.
Yeah, that makes sense. And at the end of the day, to be honest with you, in a health system IT budget, an executive coach is a drop in the bucket.
Hey.
Well, it technically is a drop in the bucket. Sorry. Yeah. So you have, we're getting pretty close to the end of the show, but anything else you would say about executive coaching, or anything else you would say about the process?
It's to go back and just say we think we can do it we all think we can do it on our own, and yet leadership by definition is lonely. And that's kind of the starting point, to just admit that, which is not that fun to admit, because we all want to be, the guy who's out there doing it alone. And yet, by definition, leadership is lonely, and get the different perspective.
Yep. And it's being in it with somebody, being able to have those conversations that was so valuable. So I appreciate you being my coach. Is there a way for people to follow you? Do you, outside of writing books?
Well, let's plug the books. Building a Vision for Your Life.
Yeah.
Is the book about the core motivator process. And it is bobperkinsconsulting.com. And you can go there and find out more about what I do in the coaching, and all my contact information is there. It is bperkins@visionforyourlife.com.
Yeah. And the other thing is you also have a wine club. Not that I'm plugging the wine club, but I am a member. It's like the hair club for men. I am a member of your wine club. So you go over to France every year now, and you pick out wines that aren't generally imported, and you get those, and I get, I don't know, 4 to 6 cases. I forget how many cases I get now. What do I get? 4 cases a year?
You get 5, but here's the thing that winds us all, pulls it all together. Yes, I go to France every year, spend 6 to 8 weeks. I import wine. But here's the one, back full circle to what's the one question you ought to be asking your coach. And that is it working for him or her? Vision for your life, Hair Club for Men. The first client for Vision for Your Life was me. And I had to say, what do I want my life to look like? And, and I made the decisions 20 years ago that this is the life that I wanted out of who I am. And that may be really the first question to ask a potential coach. Is it working for you?
Yeah. And I love the thing you shared with me a long time ago was plot-driven life versus a character-driven life. And plot-driven life is just, it's time to get married. I get married. It's time to get a job. I get a job. It's time to, and life just sort of happens to us. And a character-driven life is to sit back and go, where do I want to live? Who do I want to spend time with? What do I want to be about? And that's what you're, yeah. Who am I? Yeah.
Who am I? And how does everything else I'm doing in my life, my work, my family, and how do all those things fit into the picture that is my whole life? As opposed to saying, how does my life fit into other people's pictures of what they want me to do?
Yep, absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on the show. This show is a production of This Week in Health IT. For more great content, you check out the website, thisweekinhealthit.com, or the YouTube channel, thisweekinhealthit.com/video. You check out Bob's books. They're on Amazon. Who's going to take over the world, including healthcare. Thanks. That's the end of the show. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.
Thank you.